I feel like out of anyone on the roster, Paddy Pimblett has the biggest star potential out of anyone. I feel like you do have stars in the UFC, Alex Pereira, Islam Makhachev, Ilia Topuria, other big names, Adesanya. But I feel like out of all those guys, Paddy Pimblett, even though he's not the champion, has the biggest potential star power wise out of any of those guys. And right now, the UFC is lacking in stars. They have a lot of good fights, a lot of good champions, but not a ton of star powers where the casuals, the people who don't usually watch the UFC are fighting, want to watch them fight. And I feel like Paddy Pimblett was one of the last real hopes for the UFC to have a next, Conor McGregor, another guy on that level. And I think Paddy Pimblett is that guy. They needed him to perform against Michael Chandler. He did that. He got the finish, a really good fight, domination. And it's very important that he wins his next fight because he's one fight away from the title fight. And who should his next opponent be? There's a lot of questions on who he should face, and I have my own opinions. But starting off, if you look at the top lightweights, who he could possibly face, the guys ranked above him. Right now, he's not ranked, but you have Dan Hooker above him, Dustin Poirier, Max Holloway, Gaethje, Charles Oliveira, Arman, Islam, and you have Ilia moving up to the lightweight division. Very tough to say. I don't think he should face Dan Hooker. I think that would be a fun matchup. I wouldn't mind it, but I feel like he's kind of past that. I feel like he should be facing someone a little higher up. You have Max at 4, Dustin at 5. I believe those two will be fighting each other. So I don't think either of those guys makes the most amount of sense. I know he called out Oliveira, Gaethje. He wanted to fight those two, either of those guys, which I do think makes sense, and I think both of those are good options. However, it all kind of plays out, and it's all determined what Makhachev does. We don't know if he's moving up, if he's staying at 155. A lot of it depends on if Belal wins his fight against JDM in Canada in May. If Makhachev stays, I think that they're going to do Islam versus Ilia, which is what they should do. If he moves up, though, I think either for the vacant belt or the interim title or the number one contender, I think that they're going to do Oliveira versus Ilia. Either one of those options. And if the second one happens, it does mean that Oliveira is off the table. Ilia is off the table. I don't think he should fight Ilia Topuria, in my opinion. I think, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree, I think he should face Justin Gaethje for his next fight. If he wins this, he should get a title shot. And I think Gaethje is just a big enough name for him to fight where it makes sense. Even the casuals may know Justin Gaethje, at least his highlights. It's an easier matchup for Pimblett. It's still not a super easy matchup, but it's easier than, Ilia, Oliveira, some of these other guys because of the grappling. It's a guaranteed fun fight. Gaethje has never been in a boring fight. You need Pimblett to be in fun fights. And it's probably going to be an early finish. Again, you need Pimblett to get finishes is highlights, whatever. It builds someone's star power. He needs finishes from here on out. And I think Gaethje is the perfect guy. Gaethje is also, I'm not going to say he's chinny because he showed that his chin has recovered. But I think Pimblett has more power than Fiziev, and I do think he could knock out Gaethje. But I think he probably submits him, in my opinion. And whoever wins this, I think gets a title shot. Also think that Gaethje isn't really... It makes more sense for Gaethje to fight down compared to Oliveira, compared to Arman, these guys, in my opinion. You could say he did fight down for Fiziev, but that was short notice, whatever. And it was a rematch. I think that he probably should fight down again just because it makes sense, and it's a big matchup for him. It's a big name. He's going to get paid a lot of money. But that's what I think they should do for my first option. The second one, Charles Oliveira. You could tell this is who Pimblett really wants to face. This is who he specifically called out. It's a much harder fight for Paddy Pimblett. Oliveira, he shouldn't really have to fight down this far. I assume Pimblett's going to be like 5 or 6 or something like that. I don't think Oliveira should have to fight down this far, in my opinion. I think that he should either get the next title shot or face like Arman or something, or Ilia. I don't think that he should have to face Paddy Pimblett. And the UFC needs both of these guys. Oliveira, he's not as big of a star as Pimblett. He's still a big name. People still want to see him fight. The UFC needs him to win. They don't need him to win as much as Pimblett, but still. I don't think that these two, it makes much sense for them to fight each other. I do think Oliveira wins, to be honest. I think he's a lot better than Chandler, as shown in the fight, even though Pimblett did better against Chandler than Oliveira did. I just think that Pimblett isn't really going to have much success on the ground to Oliveira like he did against Chandler, and I think Oliveira is much better on the feet against Chandler, like we saw in their fight. I would lean Oliveira, which is another reason I don't think that this makes much sense. I don't think this is the fight to make, in my opinion. It would be big. It would be very exciting. It would be a massive fight. I don't think it makes much sense. Ilia Topuria versus Paddy Pimblett, another option people are talking about, and it's crazy. This fight has been talked about for years now. I feel like almost 4 years, I want to say, or almost 3 years, I guess now. These two have real beef. It's a super fight. The buildup would be insane. There's history between these two. And for so long, it seemed like this would never happen. In different weight classes, Ilia was rising super fast, but we never knew if he would be the champion. Pimblett was rising fast, but then he had the Jared Gordon fight. People were like, he's never going to be a top 15 fighter. He's never going to be top 10 even. But now it's looking like a real possibility. Both are young, though. We don't need to rush this fight. This could happen down the line. I think that Ilia should fight for the belt, in my opinion, or the number one contender, which isn't Paddy Pimblett. I think for that reason, it doesn't make much sense right now. I think that this could be Paddy's next opponent, maybe 2 fights from now, something like that. If they fight for the belt too, that would be massive. I feel like that's one of the biggest fights the UFC could put on. And I think for Ilia, him vacating the belt and moving up after beating Volk, we know how good of a win. It already was a great win, but now after Volk got the belt back and Max Holloway, I don't think he should have to fight outside of the top 5 in his new division. I don't think it makes sense right now. Still would be super entertaining. Still arguably probably the biggest fight you could put on. But still, I don't think it makes much sense right now. Lastly, we have Paddy Pimblett versus Arman Tsarukyan. I do believe Paddy called out Arman in his post-fight speech. And I feel like that this is the one fight that could actually be boring out of all these options. It's the one where it's the least interesting. Arman is the least big name. It's a high-risk fight where I feel like Paddy has the biggest chance of losing this fight out of arguably all of them. It's the least interesting matchup, and I feel like it just doesn't make sense. It does make sense rankings-wise. Arman, it's already been said, he's not getting the next title fight, which I think is a little ridiculous, but it's whatever. So it would make sense in that fashion, but overall, it makes the least sense, and it's the one that I would want to see the least, in my opinion. But yeah, that's my personal opinion. There's other guys, like obviously Makhachev, but I don't think anyone thinks that Paddy should fight Islam right now. Dan Hooker could be a possibility. There's some other options, but I feel like these are the most likely and biggest names and the biggest fights that he could get. But yeah, let me know which one of these options you think Paddy Pimblett, who he should face next. I think Gaethje. Let me know if you disagree, why you disagree, and if so, who you want him to fight next. But yeah, that is it for me. Let me know what you think. And